Been talking about Tyler Dunne in his article really all morning long. He's the founder of Go Long, a newsletter that's dedicated to pro football journalism, and it's golongtd.com. Tyler, before we get into the article, and I appreciate the few minutes here, before we get into the article that you wrote about Dave Gettleman and the Giants and all the behind-the-scenes stuff, how can somebody access this article? Give me the details on that.
No doubt about it, Sal. Thanks so much for the opportunity and the plug, man. We appreciate it. You go right to golongtd.com, and you can subscribe right on there. It's a subscription website. You have two options. You can sign up for the free stories, or to get everything, you can become a paying subscriber for $8 a month, $50 a year. And obviously, as you probably noted, this series is just for the paid subscribers. So I greatly appreciate it. I've been absolutely blown away by the response last night into today. Giant fans, man, they wanted answers. That's for sure. So hopefully this helps supply a few of those answers.
Yeah, this is at least one of those, and I'm one of these guys who's annoyed by having to sign into all these different things, but this is one that's probably worth the read here. And you don't have to give me the details because I do want people to go and help you out and pay to read the article here. But even just the preview that I read, and I was reading it a little bit before the show, oh boy, Tyler. I mean, this is scathing against Dave Gettleman that we all kind of expected and have heard a little bit about it, but it seems you go into great detail about how awful Dave Gettleman has been here. Give me the number one thing you took away from doing your research, writing this article, about how dysfunctional Gettleman and the Giants organization has been since he's been running it.
Yeah, I guess the impetus for this series is, this is a franchise with a lot of success historically, right? A lot of Super Bowls, a lot of winning seasons, and you look at it, 9 of the last 10 years they haven't made the playoffs, 5 in a row, 6 wins or less. So I just started asking why and how, and obviously he let go of a lot of people in that building, and they're willing to talk about, the wreckage and what they saw up close, year to year, pick to pick. It's kind of twofold. I think that, Dave Gettleman and his era these last 4 years is the meat of the story. I mean, we go draft to draft and explain who liked which players, why they went with Saquon Barkley, why they took the chance on DeAndre Baker, when the area scout is telling everybody this guy has issues. Here are those issues. And, Andrew Thomas, Jason Garrett is banging the table for him. It looks like he turned it around this year, but that was a hearty debate between him and Tristan Wirfs. I mean, there was a scout in there who absolutely loved Quentin Nelson. There was a scout in there who absolutely loved Nick Chubb. So I think that the series kind of pieces it all together, but it is bigger than that. It is about ownership. It is about what you hear in Dallas and what you hear on other teams where, ownership, I think a lot of fans just assume/hope that they don't really have much involvement with the actual football. Even though we've kind of viewed the Giants as this model franchise, I think their fingerprints are everywhere with this team.
So let me ask you then, moving forward, before we get back to the article, do you, based on everything that you know from covering football, covering this team here, doing this article, do you anticipate significant changes will be made? And I'm not just talking about forcing Gettleman out. I'm talking about more significant than that. Do you anticipate that big, significant changes will be made this offseason?
Absolutely not. I would not hold your breath for big, significant changes. I think that they're making a lot of the same mistakes that they made in the past. When it comes to the football, hanging on to Eli a little too long cost him, as we kind of broke down in there, and hanging on to Daniel Jones. We'll see. Hey, I love Daniel Jones. I think a lot of people loved him. The injuries, the turnovers, if they kind of convince themselves of him, that could end up costing them. But bigger picture, I don't think that, Chris Morrow is going anywhere. John Morrow isn't going anywhere, obviously. And everything you hear right now that's out there on Kevin Abrams is what I'm hearing as well, that it seems like he is the odds-on favorite to be promoted. I will say this. I did catch up with a football exec elsewhere in the AFC, and he was hearing grumblings and rumblings that, hey, no, they are open to an outside football person at least, being involved. What does that mean? I don't know. Obviously, they love Joe Judge, but an independent thinker is what this franchise needs. They need somebody to come in there and really hold this franchise up to a mirror and figure out what in the hell has been going wrong for the last decade. I don't know if they'll find that person, but, for Giants fans' sake, let's hope so.
Talk with Tyler Dunne, golongtd.com, wrote a scathing article on the Giants front office, in particular Gettleman. Now, part of what I read, Tyler, from your column, it's funny because I've taken calls over the last couple of weeks talking about how Joe Judge is condescending, and I never got that from Judge. I mean, he gives you the coach speak and the babble, but I never got that he was condescending. However, Dave Gettleman, I did get that feel from Gettleman where he thinks he's the smartest guy in the world. Nobody can tell him anything else, yet he comes across like a complete buffoon that's out of touch by making horrible pick after horrible pick and still not acknowledging that he's lost. And then in your article, it kind of confirms that Gettleman might not be the nicest guy, somewhat of a bully as well. Expound on that if you can.
Yeah, that's what really surprised me as well, is I, like anybody else, I'm just kind of consuming these press conferences from afar. And, honestly, that's kind of why I launched Go Long is, like, I feel like most media coverage, obviously COVID's a thing, but, nobody's in the locker room. Everything's insipid press conferences, and messaging is on point, and, narratives are kind of set by some teams, and we don't get to the real story because we're not having these conversations. So my assumption was a lot of people's assumptions. He's just a fun, comical GM that, it's talking about hog mollies. But when you actually talk to people who worked for Dave Gettleman, scouts, and I get it, you may say, oh, they're bitter, they were fired. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they're pissed off when you get fired, but I think they can speak freely, when they're not working for a team, and their stories are very detailed, and they're breaking it down, just not the best person to work with. And as you put, really does kind of think he is the smartest person in the room when the body work doesn't back it up. And it kind of goes as far back to his scout days when he left Denver. They were pretty happy to see him go, a lot of those coworkers. And, you hear him Super Bowl week with the Panthers talking about how he doesn't want to fire people, that, he lived that life. He doesn't want to fire people because you're firing wives and kids and families and all of that. And then there were 2 of the 7 scouts that were fired. I mean, they flew out to Indianapolis for the Combine in 2020. They think they're a part of this whole thing. They go to the weigh-in, and boom, they're gone, just like that. So, yeah, I obviously there's always more to the story. Would have loved to talk to Dave Gettleman for this to get his side on things. It doesn't sound good, and I guess he'll quote unquote retire, but I think the Mars even know they have to move on from him.
I mean, there are quotes here, Tyler, in the article. I mean, they talk about the sign that I guess Gettleman has at his desk. Bleep holes need not apply, and obviously you don't have to go into that because we want to keep it clean here on the radio. But the scout calling him the biggest bleep in the room. The scout calling him, one ex-scout saying he can be a bully, abrasive, bombastic, and a know-it-all. These are things that we would assume, or I would assume at least, maybe I shouldn't speak for everybody, by watching him, and then to have it confirmed by people who were in that building and to have the results be what they are, that's a big-time problem. I'm surprised the Giants would deal with this crap and hire a guy and bring a guy back with that type of attitude.
It is. I think a lot of younger scouts that maybe laugh at his jokes are afraid of him to an extent, too. I think, yeah, there's a lot there. There's a lot of smoke. I think there's fire. But even beyond that, like I said, people can definitely subscribe, check it out for the full stories and all the detail. But it for a while, he was pretty inclusive on draft day. They'd go around the room. Everybody would kind of have their say. Coaches have made picks, pushed for picks. And, when it comes down to actually selecting some of these players, there were other coaches really behind it. And yet, as time kind of passed, as some scouts get fired, I mean, the 2019, when Daniel Jones's name came up, he didn't even really say anything. And maybe they were a little gun shy as an organization after the Leonard Floyd thing a few years back, and they didn't want information getting out. But I think it's definitely a good thing to have robust debate about a quarterback that you want to be the face of your franchise. Maybe those scouts saw something on film that is going to open your brain and your mind to something different about Daniel Jones. They didn't have those conversations when it came to Dave Gettleman. He kept that close to the vest, his full bloom love from the Senior Bowl. That was interesting. And then the COVID draft 2020, all the scouts are on a separate Zoom call. They're just hanging out in there. The Giants are about to pick a player, and then they just pop in and say, hey, guys, we're taking this guy. There wasn't any conversations really had then. So Yeah, there's a lot going on. That's for sure.
So he's not working with. I mean, it just sounds. It's Gettleman, and that's it. Gettleman is the one who's deciding. I want this guy. I want that guy. Yeah, sure. I'll take your input if I ask for it on occasion. Other than that, I'm the one who's making all these decisions.
No, I think there's definitely an inner circle there. Right. That's where it's in terms. I'm speaking more in terms of his scouts and that group. There's whether it's him and Pat Shermer, him and Joe Judge. I think that there were people that he leaned on within that inner circle, but I'm just saying, look, when you're making a huge decision, like you're franchise quarterback, and these are pre-draft meetings, and you're going around the room, you're trying to learn as much as you can. It's just a little strange, I think, that the GM is playing it that close to the vest. That's the NFL, too. It's the silly season. Everybody's paranoid. Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, they didn't tell any scouts, any coaches, anybody that they like Trey Lance. So, maybe that's just part of it, too. But, when it's such a big decision that's going to get people fired, you would think that maybe you want to hear what everybody has to say about that guy and then give them your thoughts and kind of more of a back and forth in the head.
Okay, that's fair enough. Last one, Tyler, before we go, we asked about the future, significant changes. I mean, you don't see any way that Gettleman returns, do you?
I can't. I really can't. I mean, aside from the personality stuff, even if he is close with ownership, the results speak for themselves. I mean, the bottom line is the bottom line, and you have enough body of work there. I can't see a scenario where he's back. I think he retires. They try to retire him gracefully. And I don't know how, with a straight face, he could say that he is leaving the team better than he found it. Right, day one, he inherited a bad offensive line, but it's still a bad offensive line. His point of emphasis never really did come to fruition.
Yeah, well, results-wise, we know he deserves to go. My question is ownership. I mean, based on results, there should be significant changes. So until I actually see it, and I know by all accounts it sounds like he's going to go, until I actually see it, how do we know? Because if you're saying, well, it doesn't sound like there's going to be significant changes, but everybody does assume Gettleman's out, how do we fully trust that the ownership is going to do the right thing and force him out?
Right. Anything's possible, right? Given
I hope not.
Right. You never know. I do think, though, that they realize even if it's through the scapegoat lens, I think they hear from the fans. Like, they know the fans are ticked off, and the fans are the ones that are filling that stadium, and they might just not show up one day, right? If you're going to be giving out the medium sodas and doing all that stuff, like, that's the only thing that could really, really bring substantial change. But I think that they have to acknowledge that people are upset, and they have got to do something about it. And at the very least, gently nudge Dave Gettleman out the door. Now, the big question is, are they going to take that next step? Are they going to think outside of the box and find somebody to clean this up that doesn't really have any ties to the current regime?
Which is exactly what they need. Thank you, Tyler. We appreciate the few minutes.